She was the perfect empress, beloved by the people. Yet the emperor never loved her. In fact, he despised her deeply. Even when she drank the poisoned wine in his place and collapsed, he didn't reach out to steady her. And even then, at the edge of death, the empress still asked His Majesty, "Was I a good empress? A woman who could die for him?" And all she received was his cold, indifferent gaze without a trace of pity. After her death, the people took to the streets on their own to bid her farewell. Under pressure, the emperor had no choice but to hold an additional memorial for her. He praised her passionately, even lowered his head and shed insincere tears. He had believed that life would be peaceful once she was gone. Yet nobles kept coming to propose marriage, nearly wearing down the palace gates. The concubines who coveted the empress's position used every means possible, plunging the harem into chaos. He pressed his fingers to his aching temple. And he couldn't help recalling the dead empress. At least with her around, none of this trouble came to him. At the very least, the two of them looked like a perfect match on the surface. After the empress's death, the emperor's headaches never went away. To find the cause, he summoned priests and sages. Yet all of them spouted nonsense for the sake of power and wealth. Until today, when he met a witch, only then was the truth revealed. The witch gently touched the flowers in the vase. She said that although the flowers were beautiful, their scent was far too strong for a study. When Her Majesty managed things, Your Highness didn't suffer from headaches, did you? Memories of the Empress flashed through his mind, and the pain in his head worsened. He began to feel irritated by the nauseating fragrance, irritated by the women swarming around him like flies. Everything was irritating. Under the setting sun, the Emperor found himself missing the Empress. He opened the only diary she had left behind. Inside were records of her daily life from childhood onward. Reading the embarrassing little stories from her youth, he actually smiled for the first time in a long while. But the following entries made him fall silent. For the Emperor, she vowed to become the perfect empress, examining herself every single day, forcing her will to stay firm, brainwashing herself, becoming like an exquisite doll, caring for him so meticulously that he never had to worry about trivial matters. Yet they never had a child, and the royal family needed an heir. To be the perfect empress, she believed she had to accept even the children of concubines. She suggested expanding the harem and kept comforting herself that it was all right. But was it really all right? The messy handwriting showed how unwilling its owner had been. The empress's tears on the page had long dried, while the emperor's tears had only just fallen. He suddenly realized he knew nothing about the empress. What she looked like when she smiled, what her crying sounded like, what she liked and what she disliked. They say affection that comes too late is worth less than grass. The emperor finally saw how foolish he had once been. He had missed the woman whose eyes had once held only him, and this missed chance was eternal. The emperor put on a cloak and went to the clock tower to find the witch. Under the witch's startled gaze, he fell to his knees. He begged her to turn back time so he could make up for his wrongs against the empress. He was willing to pay with his life if necessary. Under the witch's spell, he fell into a deep sleep. When he awoke again, everything before him looked strangely familiar. Leon felt the smallness of his body, still unable to believe it. But when he shook the bell and saw the nanny rushing in, he finally believed he had truly returned to the past. Because the nanny had died when he was 18. He let out a long breath. If this wasn't a dream, he had to cancel his engagement to the empress as soon as possible. If she could marry a man she loved and live like an ordinary girl, she wouldn't die because of him, she might even live a happy life. The nanny brought out a formal outfit for Leon to wear. But he felt he had seen it somewhere before. It turned out that today was the day of his first arranged meeting with the empress. Sitting inside the carriage, Leon felt suffocated. Why did he return to this day of all days? I'm not mentally prepared. He was about to meet Isolde. His feelings now weren't anticipation but nervous excitement. He reminded himself silently. When he sees Isolde, he must compliment her first to leave a good impression. They finally arrived at the Duke's estate. Upon seeing Isolde, Leon hurried toward her in quick steps. Isolde greeted him with an elegant noble's bow. Looking at his future wife, Leon suddenly felt his voice choke. "Miss, your beautiful silver hair and closed eyes are truly lovely." But the moment she heard those two words, Isolde's expression changed drastically. Fear flashed across her face. Leon stopped what he was about to say and instead asked with concern whether Isolde wasn't feeling well. The Duke stepped forward to explain that Isolde was likely nervous from meeting the Crown Prince for the first time, and suggested they continue the conversation indoors. He then instructed his wife to take Isolde to tidy up her clothes and makeup. Back in the bedroom, Isolde was shoved to the floor by her mother. "Didn't I warn you? You cannot be disrespectful when meeting the Crown Prince. You must make him like you." With that, she raised a wooden stick. Ignoring Isolde's desperate pleas, she struck her hard. Isolde collapsed in pain, begging her mother for another chance. But her mother showed no pity at all and raised her hand to slap Isolde's face. Just then, a knock at the door stopped her movement. Leon's voice followed. "Madam, may I go in to see little Isolde?" Back in the past, Leon stepped into young Isolde's room for the first time. The pale furnishings resembled a hospital ward. A strong smell of blood hit him, causing his brow to furrow. Seeing Isolde lying on the bed with her shoes still on, he couldn't help asking the Duchess whether they shouldn't call a doctor, and to change her into more comfortable shoes. The Duchess hurried to hide the stick still stained with blood, insisting the family had their own doctor and the Crown Prince need not worry. On the other side, the Duke helped remove Isolde's shoes, while the Duchess said Isolde wasn't feeling well and the Crown Prince should visit another day. Leon, in a stubborn tone, insisted he wanted to see Isolde's sleeping face. After saying that, he ignored the hesitant Duchess and walked to the bedside, gazing at the sleeping Isolde. In Leon's eyes were 7 parts heartache and 3 parts regret. He remembered their first meeting, how he had known nothing of Isolde's suffering and had even spoken harshly to her. A single simple sentence from him back then could have freed her from the heels, yet he only understood her thoughts now. "I was truly useless," he murmured, gently brushing aside her messy hair. But he then noticed that Isolde was crying. Caught, she sat up and tried to explain, but upon seeing the sadness in Leon's eyes, she couldn't help but shrink in fear. Could it be, just as her mother said, that she wasn't elegant enough, and that His Highness was disappointed? In a soft voice, Isolde pleaded with Leon not to be sad. Her words startled Leon. "This isn't sadness, I'm only worried about your condition. I wish." He was abruptly cut off by the panicked Isolde. "I'm not sick." Leon couldn't bear to look at her anymore. He feared he truly might cry. She was clearly still ill, yet reflexively denied it. One could only imagine how often she had been punished. Seeing the blood-stained socks on her feet, Leon thought that he must first get her a pair of comfortable shoes. To ease the atmosphere, Leon casually asked what color Isolde liked. Looking into Leon's gem-like eyes, she answered, "I like the violet color of your Highness's pupils." At that moment, the Duchess slammed the stick onto the table with a sharp crack. Isolde trembled all over in fear and quickly changed her answer, saying her favorite color was white. Leon shot the Duke and Duchess a furious glance. So this was how they treated Isolde. Crown Prince Leon noticed how they kept signaling Isolde to match his preferences. So he casually shifted his posture, blocking their line of sight. He gently asked again, "Do you truly like white the most?" Seeing the sincerity in Leon's eyes, Isolde blushed, tears still clinging to the corners of her eyes. But the panic was gone. "Have you ever seen the sky between the leaves in summer? That blue-green color, that's my favorite." Then she whispered near his ear, "But father and mother always tell me to say I like white." Hearing this, Leon rose abruptly. "From now on, you don't." Then he turned to the Duke. "Isolde says her favorite color is the blue-green shade of her pupils. There's a bit too little of that in this room, isn't there? I trust you understand." The Duke stiffened in fear and stammered that he would certainly take care of it. Seeing that it was time to leave, Leon prepared to take his leave. Isolde raised her hand slightly, reluctant to see him go. The feeling of being protected had given her a sense of safety she'd never known before, yet the words caught in her throat. Leon, always paying attention to her, naturally saw her movement and gently took her hand, saying softly, "I hope that when we meet again, you'll be healthy and well." Those words were not only meant for Isolde, they were a warning to the Duke and Duchess. Feeling the warmth of his palm, Isolde felt her heart melt. Leon's large, warm hand seemed determined to hold onto something fragile. The maid waiting at the door saw Leon come out and eagerly asked how he felt about Isolde. But Leon answered with something unrelated, telling them to first buy a pair of leather shoes on the way back. After meeting the Empress again, he realized he could no longer let go, so he could only try to change himself. As long as she could be happy, he was willing to give up everything, yet he couldn't help wondering whether he was worthy of making Isolde happy. At the tailor's shop, Leon pondered how to design shoes for Isolde that were both comfortable and beautiful. The tailor suggested using embroidery. Embroidery paired with gemstones would be lightweight and cute, perfect for spring. The young lady receiving this gift will surely be delighted. If you have a preferred style, I can modify it for you. Leon stared at the design sketch, mind drifting as he recalled everything written in the Empress's diary. Then embroider blue forget-me-nots for me. Today was Leon and Isolde's first official date. Excited, he carried the gift and strode toward Isolde's room. Meanwhile, Isolde sat properly in her boudoir, waiting. In the past few days, her life had undergone tremendous change. Her once all-white room was now gradually being replaced with blue items. And the shoe cabinet was filling up with more and more low-heeled shoes. The biggest change was in her mother, who used to hit her over the smallest things, but now showed the gentleness a mother should have and respected her opinions, no longer insisting she wear a corset. And all of these changes came from that boy with the gentle smile. Leon took out the pair of shoes he had carefully designed. Then he bent down and personally helped Isolde put them on. Isolde panicked and tried to refuse, but Leon firmly held her delicate foot and slipped the shoe on. Wearing the new shoes, Isolde stepped onto the carpet. Her face blossomed with surprise. She hadn't expected shoes to be this comfortable. Her toes no longer hurt and even her steps felt lighter. Taking advantage of her excitement, Leon invited her on a date. Isolde, would you join me for afternoon tea in the garden? In the garden, the once smiling Isolde now wore a troubled expression, as if she wanted to say something but didn't know how. Leon thought for a moment and teased, "Pretty boring, huh?" Startled, Isolde blurted out, No, it's not like that." In fact, she did want to walk around more with him, but to avoid doing anything improper, she decided it was better to just sit still. Seeing she wouldn't speak much, Leon asked what she liked to do for fun. Isolde honestly replied that she practiced embroidery, read poetry, and admired paintings. "But those are all lessons, not fun. Is there anything you do that actually makes you happy?" Feeling Leon's intent gaze, Isolde nervously fidgeted with her hands. But after thinking for a long time, she still couldn't say anything. At that moment, Leon caught sight of the grassy field nearby, and suddenly thought of a fun idea, inviting Isolde to sit in the flower bed with him. Hearing Leon's words, Isolde shook her head in panic. Doing something so improper, if her mother found out, she would scold her again. Seeing her hesitate, Leon demonstrated personally. Since she didn't dare, then he, the crown prince, would be the first to do this strange thing. Leon collapsed breathlessly into the flower bed, but still called out loudly for Isolde to come over quickly. Although she kept telling herself it was improper, Isolde's body couldn't help but run toward him. The feeling of wind brushing her face was so joyful. The soil beneath her feet was softer than any carpet, and most unexpectedly, running felt far happier than walking. Leon shared this small act of rebellion with his fiancée, watching her face flush bright red from excitement. Leon couldn't help thinking how adorable she was, his heartbeat racing uncontrollably. A feeling he had never experienced in either lifetime surged within him. Then he wove a ring from fresh flowers and handed it to Isolde. "Pretty, right? It's for you." Looking at the delicate ring, the blush on Isolde's cheeks grew deeper, and the smile on her face could no longer be hidden. Leon gently took her small hand and slid the ring onto her finger. "If you want, I'll bring you the royal family's heirloom ring tomorrow. So Isolde, will you be my partner?" Faced with Leon's sudden confession, Isolde's tears streamed uncontrollably down her face. Wanting to put a ring on Leon as well, her hands trembled wildly as if they no longer belonged to her. Her heart tingled, and just as she didn't know what to do, Leon pulled her tightly into his arms. Dominantly, he said, "Since you accepted my ring, you're mine for life. This time, I will make you the happiest wife in the world." Isolde felt the warmth of Leon's embrace and closed her eyes, inhaling his unique scent. And without meaning to, tears of happiness streamed down her cheeks. But when she opened her eyes again, she found herself lying on her bed. She was startled to see her mother sitting rigidly beside her. Instinctively, she began apologizing over and over. But her mother didn't respond, only gripping her teacup with trembling hands. "What are you lacking?" Furniture worth a fortune, luxurious clothes, fine food, countless servants waiting on you. We've given you such a wealthy life. So what exactly are you lacking? Hearing her mother's words, Isolde trembled in fear. I'm sorry, next time I'll... Before she could finish, her mother seized her shoulders. Her voice cracked with a hint of madness. Next time? You think there will be a next time? Isolde, listen carefully, you must become the Empress, understood? Feeling her mother's suffocating embrace, Isolde forced herself to respond, saying she understood. And her mother left, satisfied with the answer. Isolde touched the ring on her hand and began to think of Leon. Leon, when I grow up, I can become the crown princess and stay with you forever, right? By then, maybe I won't be beaten so often anymore. Limping, Isolde made her way to the vanity table and carefully placed the ring into her jewelry box. Though she didn't understand what Leon meant by love, as long as she could stay by his side, that was enough. For this, she resolved to become what her mother demanded. A perfect empress, flawless and without fault. It had already been a week since he last saw Isolde, and Leon, filled with longing, couldn't sleep. He began to reflect on why he had treated Empress Isolde so coldly in the past, even though they barely had any interaction. Leon quietly counted, he and Isolde had met only 5 times. Why had he been so heartless toward her? After much thought, he finally found a clue. Empress Isolde, no matter how tired or exhausted, always forced a fake smile. It chilled him to the bone. The more perfect she appeared, the more she seemed like a doll wearing human skin, which made him instinctively reject and resent her. And because of that, after she became Empress, he completely ignored her. Realizing everything, Leon buried his head into his pillow in shame, cursing himself for being absolute trash back then. Isolde did everything so perfectly, and this deliberate perfection. Back then he didn't find it strange at all and simply ignored it. Thinking back to what he witnessed in the Duke's mansion, he now understood. Isolde had always been controlled and restrained by the Duke. At this moment, Leon made up his mind. In this life he would fulfill all of Isolde's wishes. He would help her break every shackle and live freely like a carefree child. So first he needed to rescue her from the Duke's grasp. But as a mere 10-year-old he could only solve it with a child's method. Soon the sound of his hurried footsteps echoed through the corridor. The butler rushed to report to the peacefully sleeping emperor that the crown prince had something urgent. The emperor waved impatiently. Tell that little brat we're busy giving him a younger brother. Saying so, he reached for the empress for a hug. By then, Leon was already standing outside the royal bedchamber. Impatient, he shouted for them to open the door and told the emperor not to bully his mother. When the doors opened, the emperor stepped out in his night robe, clearly annoyed. What are you doing in the middle of the night? By imperial order, go cool off somewhere far away from here. But the empress quickly followed and said, by imperial authority, I object to that order. Then come to mother. Leon hugged the empress tightly, cherishing the motherly warmth he hadn't felt for over 10 years. The empress looked at him fondly. So then, your highness, what brings you before his majesty tonight? Only then did Leon remember why he came, and he excitedly begged the empress to save his future wife. He then exaggerated the details of how Isolde was abused and controlled in the Duke's mansion. The emperor, who had initially been indifferent, gradually furrowed his brows. The empress immediately ordered the servants to prepare a carriage at once. She would go to the Duke's estate tonight to rescue her daughter-in-law from that den of misery. The Duke, dragged out of bed, looked livid. Normally he could tolerate bowing to imperial power, but barging in at midnight without notice. Outrageous. The hastily dressed duchess followed behind him and greeted the empress separately. The empress didn't bother with politeness and stated directly that she wanted to bring Isolde into the palace. Since she was destined to become the crown princess, starting etiquette training early would be beneficial. The duchess was stunned. Remembering the wounds she herself had inflicted on Isolde that hadn't yet healed, cold sweat began streaming down her face. Meanwhile, the emperor made the same request to the Duke. The Duke's expression changed dramatically from fear. Seeing this reaction, the emperor, who had believed Leon only 70%, now believed 90%. And judging by the situation, it seemed even worse than Leon had described. Cornered by the emperor's sharp gaze, the Duke nervously said, "But this isn't something His Highness alone can decide, right?" The emperor casually replied, "Of course, that's precisely why I'm asking for your opinion." The Duke's veins bulged in anger. How is this asking for my opinion? It's clearly a final ultimatum. But then he reconsidered. This might actually be an opportunity that if Isolde entered the palace early, he would gain a legitimate reason to visit often. An undeniable prestige boost among the nobles. The emperor caught every shift on the duke's face, fully aware of the schemes turning in his mind. Feeling this deal was worth it, the duke finally forced a smile. I have no objections, your majesty, but perhaps we should also hear my wife's thoughts. Before he finished, the empress pushed the door open. The duchess followed behind her with a heavy expression, informing the duke that the empress wished to bring Isolde into the palace. At that, the duke sensed something terribly wrong. The empress had never cared about such matters. Why the sudden action? Could it be because of the crown prince? Once reunited, the emperor and empress began echoing each other. The empress said Leo was growing up, and now was the perfect time to gather noble children in the palace to build friendships. The emperor immediately added, we might as well invite the young noble ladies too. Let them befriend Isolde. The imperial couple grew more delighted as they spoke, as if they could already see themselves holding a grandchild. The duchess collapsed to the floor with a thud. She then crawled to the empress's feet, pleading not to separate her from her daughter. Yet the face she kept lowered trembled with fear. Isolde still carried the wounds she herself had inflicted, wounds that had not healed. She shot the duke a frantic look, urging him to beg as well. While the two adults were busy putting on their sorrowful display, the doors swung open again. Leo stood there, one hand supporting Isolde, the other on his hip. You adults don't know something this simple. Just ask Isolde what she wants. Beside him, Isolde kept her head lowered, cold sweat sliding down her face from sheer anxiety. Her small hands clutched her skirt tightly. What should I do? No one ever told me what I'm supposed to do. Unable to withstand the pressure, she broke down and burst into tears. She kept apologizing to Leo in a panic over and over. Her devastated expression made the emperor and empress ache with sympathy. The rapid swings in emotion pushed her fragile body over its limit. Her vision blurred. And then she collapsed straight into Leo's arms. Leo finally realized how much pressure his impulsiveness had brought upon her. Holding her tightly, he addressed everyone present. Father, mother, duke. Coming without notice and stubbornly putting Isolde in a difficult position was thoughtless of me, that I sincerely apologize. But the duchess quickly cut in. It's not your fault, it's all Isolde's. Leo snapped back with fury. Isolde did nothing wrong. The empress immediately stepped in to defuse the situation. Crown Prince, mind your manners, we adults have matters to discuss. Take Isolde upstairs first. The duchess hurriedly ordered the butler to guide them to a room. Leo carefully placed Isolde into the butler's arms. Before leaving, he bowed once more. If blame must be placed directed at me, please don't punish Isolde. Watching the butler carry Isolde ahead of him, Leo felt a dull ache in his chest. Even this soft carpet must feel like walking on blades for her. Before he could stop it, this sterile all-white room, like a hospital ward, was slowly erasing Isolde's true nature. No wonder that in their past life, even as the empress, she always read his mood from behind, tiptoeing around him, living like a shadow with no self. Leo knelt on one knee beside Isolde's bed, gently holding her small hand as he confessed. My empress, I'm sorry. Please give me another chance, that I won't be foolish again. In this life I will make you happy. I will return every moment that was taken from you, every second. Even if the price is my own life, I'll accept it. So please get better. After Leo left, the emperor and empress could no longer contain their fury. Their future daughter-in-law, who should have been raised in comfort, was this frail. Their anger naturally turned toward the duke and duchess. A child is meant to grow up surrounded by love. But I doubt either of you deserve to be called parents. Isolde will return to the palace with us immediately, and the engagement ceremony will be moved up. The empress ordered the maids to carefully lift Isolde, bringing her to the wardrobe to prepare her belongings. But the moment she opened it, her body trembled with rage. Inside the wardrobe were only gowns and corsets, no casual clothing at all. The empress questioned the duchess sharply. Are you raising a child or keeping an animal? You make her live in this human-shaped prison every day? Do you even know what Isolde likes? Confronted with the empress's three soul-piercing questions, the duchess was speechless. She wanted to argue, but realized she truly knew nothing about Isolde's preferences. The maid's arrival only worsened the Empress's impression of her. They found merely 2 or 3 things Isolde liked. An unbelievable number for a 10-year-old child who should love to play. This time the Empress didn't even bother maintaining a polite smile. She ordered coldly, "Put everything on the carriage." Though the truth was heartbreaking, they had at least rescued Isolde from that cruel home. Inside the carriage, the Empress watched her son and future daughter-in-law sleeping side by side, her heart aching. After an unknown stretch of time, Leo slowly awoke. Seeing his exhausted mother leaning on the Emperor's shoulder, he whispered, "Father, please treat Mother better." The Emperor sighed. "Why don't you focus on taking care of your own woman first?" After a moment of silence, Leo murmured, half asking himself, half asking the Emperor, "Do you think Mother is truly happy?" The Emperor's gaze darkened. "We are happy, but at the same time, cursed. That is the price of power, its double-edged nature." The carriage fell silent once more. Father and son stared out the window, perhaps thinking about their own futures. Meanwhile, Isolde's consciousness slowly returned. 2 figures appeared within her blurred vision, and something about them felt familiar. She suddenly opened her eyes wide and, startled, bowed to the Emperor and Empress, then hurriedly asked Leo why she was here. Her adorable reaction made the imperial couple laugh for the first time today. After the laughter faded, the Empress gently asked whether Isolde had ever left the Duke's estate, and Isolde looked longingly out the window. "I have, but whenever I went out the carriage curtains were always drawn so I wouldn't get tanned." The Empress's face filled with heartbreak and she stopped beating around the bush. "From now on, why don't you live in the palace with us? Would you like that?" Isolde grew visibly uneasy, for she had lived her entire life under her parents' commands and had never made her own choices. Leo noticed her distress and whispered in her ear, "If you come to the palace, no one will ever hit you again and no one will force you to study things you hate. You can do whatever you want." As he spoke, he playfully tapped her little nose. "And you'll be with me all the time. Do you want to be with me?" The Empress took Leo's hand, then gently asked Isolde, "Child, would you let me hold your hand as we walk?" Such unfamiliar tenderness left Isolde stunned, and instinctively she tightened her grip on the Empress's hand. With that, the Empress led Isolde to a room, crouched down and said, "Out of all these rooms, none feel good enough. For today, stay here first, and later we'll build a new palace just for you." As the maids prepared the room, she added, "Go change your clothes for now." Only then did Isolde realize she was still in her nightwear and she apologized shyly, whispering, "But, without a corset, can I dress properly?" Hearing this, the Empress pulled her into a warm embrace. "You've suffered enough. You don't need a corset anymore. You're still growing." Hearing the Empress's words, Isolde felt something strange. It wasn't a sad topic, yet she suddenly had the urge to cry. As they chatted, the maids had already prepared her gown, and gathered around her with endless compliments. "As expected of our future Empress, such smooth hair, such fair skin, you truly match His Highness perfectly." Their praise made Isolde blush, but when the maids cheerfully began helping her undress, they froze at the sight of the wounds on her body and shrieked, their voices cracking, "Get a doctor, hurry." Leo, waiting outside, heard the shout, and was just about to knock when the door swung open and hit him square on the nose, causing blood to pour down. The maids, however, sprinted away and soon returned dragging a doctor behind them, while Leo tried to squeeze his head into the room to see what was happening, and when he finally saw the injuries, his eyes widened in anguish. Only then did the maids notice Leo's bleeding nose, quickly pulling him aside to stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, Isolde trembled from the pain during treatment, yet stubbornly refused to cry out, and a maid comforted her, "Don't be afraid, Her Majesty is coming soon." Moments later, before the Empress even arrived, her anxious voice echoed down the hall. "Isolde, are you all right? What have they done to a child?" The Empress looked at Isolde's bandaged legs, her heart aching, and the doctor explained the injuries in detail. Not only her legs were hurt, her waist still bore marks from the corset. Luckily, nothing was infected and her toenails hadn't fully warped. A miracle, really. It was impossible to imagine how any parent could do this to a child. The Empress gently stroked Isolde's head, comforting her, and promised, "As long as I remain Empress, and one day as Empress Dowager, no one will ever lay a finger on you again, not while I live." Isolde's blue eyes and light blue gown made her look like a princess straight out of a fairy tale, and Leo's eyes widened, a rare blush coloring them. Isolde, you look like a water spirit. You're adorable. Hearing such a direct compliment, Isolde looked as if steam rose from her head, the blush spreading from her cheeks to her whole body as she whispered, Your Highness, please don't tease me. Seeing her disbelief, Leo insisted more earnestly, I'm telling the truth that you're the most beautiful, most adorable person I've ever seen. A mix of shyness and awkwardness floated between them, and Leo used the excuse of being tired from the carriage ride, escaping back to his chambers to calm himself down, when suddenly there was a knock at the door, and Isolde peeked in, her small head appearing through the opening, her face red, hands clasped tightly, clearly wanting to say something but unable to. Leo, seeing how cute she looked, guessed she had come to say good night, so he said it first softly, Good night. This time Isolde didn't hesitate and happily replied, Good night. Then to her surprise, Leo leaned in and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek. That's your good night kiss. Isolde touched the spot where Leon had stolen a kiss, spacing out in a daze. Then, blushing hard, she slipped into Leon's bed. Leon stepped forward to remind her that it was his bed, only to find that Isolde had already fallen asleep. Was this their first night sharing a bed? As he debated whether he should sleep on the floor, his body honestly climbed into the blankets on its own. Looking at the girl beside him, Leon made a silent vow that he would make sure this small face carried a smile every single day. Later, Leon appeared once again on the training grounds. Just as he was about to become a sword saint in his dream, a maid shook him awake. My lady has finished washing up, your highness should rise as well. Half asleep, Leon jerked upright the moment he heard that. Standing beside the maid, Isolde covered her mouth and laughed. She never knew Leon loved sleeping in. The next day the two of them went to adopt a dog together. Isolde grew more fond of the 3 puppies before her and reached out to touch them. The 3 little ones licked her hand enthusiastically, making her squeal from the ticklish sensation. Leon panicked and grabbed her shoulders, asking urgently if she had been bitten. Isolde froze for a moment as she looked at Leon's worried expression. Then she looked up with a bright smile and asked Leon if she could adopt one. In the end, Isolde chose the puppy with the blue ribbon, the one that had been Leon's closest friend in his past life. It turned out she had noticed Leon's gaze lingering on that little one the longest, so she thoughtfully picked it. At that moment, Leon suddenly asked whether she was getting used to living in the palace. But Isolde's expression fell at once. She said she felt scared, though she didn't know what she was afraid of. And she had overheard the maids talking, saying she would never see her father or mother again. Leon hesitated for a moment before saying, If you want to see them, you naturally can. But as he said that, he remembered what happened in his previous life after Isolde died. Her father immediately tried to push her younger sister onto him. Was a father like that really worth seeing? And he suddenly doubted whether his memories had even been accurate. Seeing Leon's strange expression, Isolde asked with concern whether he felt unwell. Snapped back to reality, Leon forced a bright smile and said he was fine. He had simply thought of something else. Once she confirmed he was all right, Isolde suddenly confessed to him, Your Highness, you're like a magician to me. Every time I see you, my heart feels all tingly. Thank you, Your Highness, for letting me experience so many firsts in my life. Leon's face flushed red and he had no idea how he was supposed to respond. Just then, the butler entered, saying the emperor was waiting for him in the office. Out in the corridor, Leon looked utterly frustrated. Isolde's longing for her parents made him realize he had handled this matter terribly and hadn't planned for anything afterward. Without noticing, he arrived at the emperor's office door, and today it felt especially tall. When Leon pushed the door open, the emperor slammed his pen onto the desk with a sharp snap. Has the crown prince realized his mistake? Isolde's longing for her parents made Leon realize he had acted impulsively without thinking of the consequences. Fortunately, the emperor cleaned up the mess for him. He not only sent a letter of apology to Isolde's parents but also delivered the betrothal gifts in advance. The lands confiscated from the duke's estate were returned to them. Leon then asked timidly, They won't try to go back on their word and take Isolde away, right? The emperor rubbed his temples. This isn't the time to be thinking about that, child. Hearing that, Leon panicked. But you were the one who taught me to protect my woman. What if they keep doing that thing in secret and threaten the palace? Before he could finish, the emperor cut him off bluntly. This is not something a 10-year-old should be worrying about. What you should be thinking about is this. Yes, you saved Isolde, but was your method appropriate? Leon, guilty, didn't dare look him in the eye, but still stubbornly said that if he hadn't acted, Isolde would still be suffering in the duke's estate. Seeing his stubbornness, the emperor continued, and what if I had issued a formal decree to summon her to the palace? It would have taken time, yes, but if they truly respected a mere imperial order, none of this would have happened in the first place. Leon clenched his fists. His voice involuntarily grew louder. Mind your volume, Crown Prince. A right outcome does not mean the process was right. As the future heir to the empire, you must be even more careful in your choices. Hearing the emperor's earnest teaching, Leon finally admitted his mistake and promised to act more cautiously in the future. With a sigh, the emperor changed the topic and asked whether Isolde was adjusting to palace life. At the mention of private matters, Leon recalled what happened last night. His cheeks flushed red as he awkwardly said, He gave Isolde a puppy. The emperor showed a fatherly smile. Take good care of her. Leon was speechless. Why are you suddenly worrying about me? The emperor gave him a strange grin. Then he picked Leon up and carried him toward the door. Worry about you? Not really. Besides, your mother and I are busy trying to make you a younger sibling. Don't come near the bedchamber to bother us. Elsewhere, the seamstress was designing outfits for Isolde. After looking them over, Isolde asked, Aren't there too few gems and lace? Startled, the seamstress exclaimed, So you prefer glamorous dresses? I can add pearls and jewels for you. Isolde quickly waved her hands. No, I actually dislike those. I just wanted to know if I'm allowed to wear such comfortable clothes in the palace. The seamstress looked puzzled. But of course. Especially at your tender age, overly elaborate designs don't really suit you. Then she gently asked, What kind of clothes did you usually wear? A full set of silver underdress, then a corset over it, then a hoop skirt on top, and the dress itself was covered in gems. As Isolde spoke, the seamstress's jaw dropped. She had actually been wearing corrective undergarments that even adults were reluctant to wear lately. Lace woven with silver thread, rough and harsh on the skin. Only then did the seamstress realize Isolde didn't want fancy clothes. She was simply afraid of being forced into that kind of outfit again. Hearing about Isolde's past, the seamstress stared at the frail girl in shock, unable to imagine how she had survived such a hellish life. She lifted a mirror for Isolde to see herself and said, No jewel could ever outshine your blue eyes, and no thread could compare to your soft hair. The most beautiful thing in this world is you. Isolde's face turned scarlet at the praise. No one had ever complimented her like this before. The seamstress then began recommending various clothes, hair accessories, and shoes. The many terms Isolde had never heard before left her completely at a loss. Noticing her unease, the seamstress paused and asked for her opinion. Unconsciously, Isolde recalled the way her mother used to scold her. You never have any opinions of your own. You can't even make a simple decision. Terrified, she squeezed her eyes shut. Just then, the seamstress spoke gently. There are so many options that it must be tiring to choose, right? Then, let's take one of each. Isolde's eyes widened in surprise. All of them? The seamstress walked closer to her, held Isolde's small hand and said, My job is to make people beautiful. But I alone can't make someone 100% beautiful, because the most important thing is the smile of the person wearing the clothes. I hope that when you wear the outfits I make, you'll be the most beautiful smile in the world, so don't worry. Just smile and leave everything to me. You're my muse after all. Isolde only half understood, but she could clearly feel the seamstress's kindness. After agreeing on the next fitting date, the seamstress opened the door to leave, when a small white dog suddenly popped out. Lion rushed after it, scooping it into his arms and apologizing to the seamstress, then lowered his head to scold the dog. Behave yourself in front of your owner, all right? At that moment, the captain of the knights also dashed in, turning the scene into sudden chaos. Feeling it was best to retreat, the seamstress excused herself immediately, while Lion coughed twice, trying to ease the awkwardness. Isolde hugged the dog and called out, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Lion told her not to be so formal and to just call him Lion. Isolde blinked in confusion. But, didn't you say I could only call you that in private? Pretend I never said that. From today on, that rule doesn't count. Anyway, let me introduce him. This is Albert, captain of the Royal Knights. Starting today, he'll be responsible for your safety. Isolde was stunned when she heard Albert's title. Someone of such high rank was actually assigned to protect her. Meanwhile, Albert himself was speechless, wondering why he was doing something like this. Just minutes ago, he'd still been patrolling the palace. When Lion suddenly called him over, grabbed him without warning and dragged him along, saying he needed him to protect a young lady. Albert wanted to refuse, but rank crushes all resistance. He originally assumed the girl would be spoiled and difficult, but Isolde's manners and gentle temperament completely changed his impression. He immediately knelt on one knee and held Isolde's small hand to perform the knight's pledge. The romantic scene made Lion irrationally jealous, but since he brought the man here himself, he could only swallow that vinegar with tears in his eyes. Still, watching another man get so close to her made irritation bubble up, and he had to repeat to himself over and over. It's fine that it's for her safety, that if it makes her happy, there's nothing I can't accept. That moment Isolde cast a pleading glance at Lion, startled by Albert's sudden gesture and unsure how to respond. Lion leaned in and whispered that the knight captain was a good man and would definitely keep her safe. Isolde's heart thumped uncontrollably. For a moment she truly felt like a princess in a fairy tale. Once the formal pledge was over, Lion couldn't bear watching them interact any longer and stepped right between them, announcing that since Albert would be protecting her, he would start taking her around the palace tomorrow. Albert felt an entire herd of mythical beasts stampede through his heart. Now he had to be knight captain, sword instructor and bodyguard. They really were treating him like a workhorse. Then suddenly he thought of a brilliant way to threaten the prince into training properly. He said, "It seems His Highness hasn't practiced swordsmanship in quite a while. After tomorrow's training, I can take the young lady to some places where you can't go, like the Royal Armory or the Magic Research Wing. But of course, if your highness objects, I'll refrain. A pity for the young lady though." Lion's face grew darker and darker as Albert spoke. He had planned to use Albert's authority to visit those places himself. Yet now he'd trapped himself instead. But he absolutely couldn't lose face in front of Isolde, so he ground his teeth and agreed. Albert, always the one being outplayed, finally won a round and cheerfully bid farewell to Lion, who looked one step away from going Super Saiyan, while Isolde only stared blankly, not understanding a word between them. Meanwhile, Bailey refused to sleep in his own bed and had occupied the exact spot Lion used last night. Lion muttered under his breath, "That's my place." Isolde heard it and instantly blushed. The atmosphere turned warm and quiet all at once. Suddenly, the two called each other's names at the same time. Isolde insisted Lion speak first. Lion scratched his head awkwardly and asked whether the flower ring he gave her was still with her. Isolde happily lifted her jewelry box. "Of course I kept it carefully, though it has already wilted." Lion asked if he could borrow it for a while. Isolde was reluctant, reminding him repeatedly to return it. Lion promised not only to return it but to add interest. He then asked what she had wanted to say earlier. Isolde explained she simply wanted to thank him for freeing her from the whip, from the painful corset, and from those torturous high heels. As she spoke, her heartbeat grew faster and faster. Yet she pushed through her shyness, continuing, "With you behind me, supporting me and staying with me, I'm not afraid anymore." "Thank you, Lion. I like you." The sudden confession left Lion at a complete loss. Two racing heartbeats blended together like a quiet, beautiful melody, echoing in their ears and deep within their hearts. After placing a gentle kiss on the girl's forehead, he whispered, "Good night," and rushed away. Isolde was left standing there, completely dazed. The moment Leon stepped outside, he crouched down. He didn't know why, but hearing Isolde thank him had made him want to cry. Maybe it was because, right now, he still felt unworthy of her gratitude. The next morning, a smile never left Isolde's face. Leon was accompanying her on a tour around the palace. She politely greeted every maid they passed. Leon told her she didn't need to treat the maids with such formal respect. Otherwise they would feel uneasy. Isolde didn't understand, but they live in the palace with us. Understanding what she meant, Leon cut her off and said that in the palace, she only needed to show respect to the king and queen. The captain of the guards chimed in at the right moment. "His Highness is right. You can be more casual with the servants. Also, what was it you were about to say?" Out of habit, Isolde almost said thank you, but remembering Leon's words, she quickly covered her mouth in embarrassment. Home. Then I wish you all a wonderful day. Her kindness and bright smile warmed everyone around her, bringing a new sense of life to the usually solemn palace. The young couple wandered around together, eventually arriving at a lakeside without even noticing how far they'd walked. A tall clock tower rose from the center of the lake. Amazed, Isolde asked Leon, "Can we go inside the clock tower?" Leon froze on the spot, cold sweat streaming uncontrollably down his face. He had told Isolde she could go anywhere she wanted, but this tower, the one that had sent him back to the past, was the last place he ever wanted to visit. Yet he couldn't resist Isolde's pleading eyes. Helpless, Leon finally took her onto the little boat. A gentle breeze brushed across the lake and Isolde's face was glowing with joy. Meanwhile, Leon was completely emo, wondering why they had to come here of all times. As their boat neared the shore, it suddenly began to shake violently. Isolde, unable to steady herself, fell straight into Leon's arms. Leon held her hand, wrapped an arm around her slender waist and shielded her. When they stepped inside the clock tower, Isolde's eyes were full of astonishment. She never expected there to be so many books, nor that the inside would be so spacious. Leon quickly pulled her aside, saying they should wait until those people passed before going out again. But having just discovered something new and interesting, Isolde refused to leave. Slightly upset, she said Leon had been acting strange since earlier. Was he hiding something from her? With no choice, Leon pulled her into a side room. The reason he wanted to leave quickly was because the tower was full of mages and eccentric people. They might hold back from playing tricks on him due to his status as crown prince. But they would never show mercy to Isolde. Filled with curiosity, Isolde picked up a clock with no hands. She asked Leon if she could play with it. Without thinking much, Leon casually replied, "You can play with it while you wait." But then something struck him and he suddenly shouted, "Isolde, don't touch that one." Yet by then Isolde had already drawn hands onto the clock. Hearing his shout, she turned her head in confusion. But the next moment, darkness engulfed her. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself inside a gloomy, eerie room. It was the first meeting between Isolde and the witch. Yet the witch seemed to know everything about her already, introducing herself as the all-knowing witch. Hearing that she was a witch, Isolde couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. After all, in every fairy tale she knew, witches were always evil. But why did this witch's eyes look so sorrowful? With a snap of her fingers, Isolde suddenly rose into the air. A table and chairs appeared around her, along with cups and teapots moving on their own. "You like rose macarons, don't you?" Isolde stared at the floating macaron in disbelief. She had never told anyone about that preference. The witch waved her hand with a smile and reminded her again, "I am the all-knowing witch, you know." Suddenly, Isolde looked at her with teary eyes. "Then, are you planning to fatten me up and eat me?" The topic shifted so abruptly that even the well-informed witch froze for a moment. After adjusting her expression, she said, "Don't worry too much that I'm your friend. Looking at things now, it seems Leon has been putting in some effort. Is he good to you?" Isolde answered yes, surprising even the witch. And once Leon was mentioned, Isolde's words poured out like a stream. "He treats me very well, that he even gave me low-heeled shoes and he embroidered forget-me-nots on them. And Leon can make flower rings too, that he made one and put it on my finger, that it's my most precious treasure. He even asked me to live in the palace with him." At this point, Isolde's cheeks grew redder and her voice softer. "I really love being with him. Oh right. Where's Leon?" Remembering why she ended up here, Isolde began to panic. She stood up, ready to run toward the door. The witch, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. "Isolde, are you happy now?" That question made Isolde stop in her tracks. Happy? Her small hand tightened on the fabric at her waist, showing her tension and confusion. "Leon always says he wants to make me happy. I know it's something good, but what exactly is it?" The witch's light chuckle interrupted Isolde's thoughts. "Oh dear, it seems Leon still has work to do. But happiness is something you must learn through your own strength. Others can help you, but they cannot plant it directly into your mind." Her words only made Isolde more puzzled. At that moment, the witch's magic book opened on its own. "It seems this is a bit too difficult for a child. What a pity. Time is almost up. I should send you back to Leon now. And remember, today's events must stay secret from everyone. Isolde looked disappointed. She had planned to tell Leon everything. I know it's a shame, but please keep it secret, all right? When I say everyone, I mean even you and me. Isolde wasn't sure if she heard that last strange line clearly. When she opened her eyes again, she had returned to the bedroom. Leon, who had been guarding her side, still had dried tear marks by the corner of his eyes from worry. Seeing the girl collapse in front of him, the scene instantly overlapped with the image of the Empress drinking poison in his past life. The two timelines crossed, draining all color from Leon's face. He shook Isolde helplessly, begging her over and over to wake up. Maybe it was just a moment, or maybe much longer. When Isolde finally woke, the first thing she saw was Leon's tear-streaked face. The moment Leon saw her awaken, he apologized again and again. Just then a red-haired girl shouted, "Incoming!" and walked inside. Isolde found her strangely familiar. The newcomer was none other than the Witch of the Central Tower in her childhood form. She told Isolde, "The clock hands in the tower must never be touched at random, that if you do, terrible things will happen." Then she reminded Leon, "You and my grandfather still have things to discuss, right? I'll take care of her for now." Leon ignored her and instead held tightly onto Isolde's hand. "Are you feeling unwell anywhere else?" Seeing how worried he was, Isolde felt sweetness and guilt tangled together. "I'm fine, Lou. Please don't cry." While the two were still whispering concerned words to each other, a voice called out, "Your Highness, it's time to go." After Leon left, the red-haired girl introduced herself to Isolde. "I'm Mimir, future master of the Central Tower and currently an intern." Hearing this, Isolde fell into thought. She felt as though she had forgotten something important. Mimir was panicking inside, terrified that Isolde might ask why her grandfather had summoned Leon. Because to retrieve Isolde's soul, Leon had traded away a portion of his own. So Mimir hurried to cover it with a harmless lie. "Do you remember that clock you touched? This tower has many toys just like it. You fainted because you saw something children shouldn't see. Something very scary. Then at Leon's request, we gave you a potion to erase that memory." Isolde, curious, asked what this tower truly was. Mimir placed her hands on her hips proudly. "Fine, I'll give you a special lesson. But you need to pay a price. Use whatever you have in your pockets." Obediently, Isolde emptied her pockets. "These things have value?" Mimir coughed in an overly mature manner. "Of course. Let me see." She picked up a brightly colored mushroom. Out loud she said, "This one's nice," while inwardly cursing. Who lets a child play with a poisonous mushroom? Mimir then asked Isolde, "What were you feeling when you put these into your pocket?" Isolde couldn't help recalling it. When she picked up a smooth pebble, Leon laughed and said it was just like him, round and chubby. And then he gave it to me, so I was really happy. "Good. Then I'll take a bit of that happiness as payment for your lesson." The witch finally began revealing the secrets of the Central Tower. She was the Empire's most brilliant mage, with both educational and research institutions under her name. As for her origins, they were a complete mystery, full of secrets no one knew. Although the tower had no clock outside, the tower itself was a clock. You saw the clocks in the previous room, right? As you noticed, there are many without hands. Every room in this tower represents hours, minutes, or seconds. When you drew the hands on that clock, it transported you to another room. So, you'd better not touch it again next time. Isolde admitted she didn't fully understand, but said she would never touch a clock again. "Lady Mimir." Mimir swung her legs lazily. "That stiff title. I'm already tired of hearing every mage call me that. Why don't you call me sister instead?" Isolde was startled by her enthusiasm and shyly whispered, "Sister?" Meanwhile, Mimir's grandfather handed Leon a sheet of paper. "Your Highness, you have two choices with this paper. Throw it away or keep it. Which do you choose?" Leon immediately crushed it into a ball. "It's useless to me anyway. I choose to throw it away." The paper ball floated up under Mimi's magic, then was slammed hard onto the floor. "Do you know what that paper was, Your Highness?" It was a mage's freshly submitted graduation thesis. Leon froze, cold sweat dripping down his temple. He hurried to pick it up. "But when I looked just now, it was blank." Mimi spoke up at that moment. "Your Highness, I was only joking." Leon's face flushed with embarrassment as he glared at Mimi's. Yet even under Leon's glare, Mimi's kept a smiling face. If that really had been a thesis and it was discarded because of your highness's simple decision, the mage who wrote it might end up resenting you. If time were reversed, what choice would your highness make this time? Leon replied without hesitation. Of course I would choose to keep it. Because now I understand how important it is. Mimi's gave a faint smile. The paper crane was instantly swallowed by flames before Leon's eyes. Mimi's meaningful voice echoed. You went through the trouble of reversing time to pick it up again, yet the outcome still didn't change. Although your highness didn't mean any harm, please be cautious with every choice you make from now on. To retrieve Isolde's soul, you sacrificed part of your own. You will regret it someday. Mages always speak in such obscure ways. But what exactly was he referring to? Regret, fate, and careful choices that I've already given everything for Isolde's happiness. I know Mimir worries about me like I'm his own grandson. But for these costs, I had already prepared myself the moment I chose to reverse time. To me, Isolde is the most precious existence. Girls always form friendships so fast. The witch and Liz were already chatting comfortably on the same bed. After only half a day, they already seemed like future best friends. Isolde curiously asked what those people in black robes were doing here. You mean the mages who want to enter this clock tower? Once their submitted thesis is approved, they can officially become the clock tower's hands. New mages act like second hands, moving quickly and causing trouble everywhere, so they are the second hand. Intermediate mages familiar with tower life are the minute hand, and senior mages are the hour hand. Isolde asked Mimir if she was an hour hand, and Mimir puffed up proudly, saying she was about to become the youngest hour hand of the mid-tower. But for now she was still a minute hand. Being an hour hand isn't something just anyone can do. Even if she started learning magic 30 years earlier than others, she still hadn't reached the level of a senior mage. Sensing Mimir's disappointment, Isolde didn't notice the 30 years earlier part and gently held her hand. With certainty in her voice she said, "You can do it, sister, you definitely can." Hearing that, Mimir's eyes welled up as she looked at Isolde. "My goodness, Isolde, you must be an angel." Then she suddenly hugged her tightly. "I really want to see whether angel's blood flows inside you." Leon returned from the elder mage and hurried to Isolde. "Are you all right? After taking the medicine Mimir's sister gave you, I feel much better." "Mimir? Sister?" Knowing Mimir's true age, Leon froze awkwardly. Behind Isolde, Mimir hugged her and showed a plan-succeeded smile. Not wanting Isolde to be influenced by her, Leon grabbed her and started pulling her away. "We should go back, there are too many strange people here." Mimir covered her mouth and laughed. "Oh, I'm the strange one, then I'll tease him a bit more." Magic turned into butterflies fluttering around her. "Isolde, would you like to wander around the mid-tower with me again?" Compared to Isolde's delighted expression, Leon's face instantly went pale. He seemed to recall something unpleasant and quickly shielded Isolde behind him. "We're not wandering, just help us find the exit door." Seeing Leon's amusing reaction, Mimir's smile grew wider. "Oh my, I didn't expect His Highness to want to leave so badly. Looks like I need to build a door quickly. By the way, Isolde, let's have afternoon tea together next time." With that, she cast a spell and opened a door for them. The two finally walked out of the mid-tower. Mimir's sister's magic is amazing. Hearing the praise, Mimir poked her head out from inside the door. "Of course, I'm way more impressive than this bad-tempered prince." Before Leon could argue back, she shut the door with a loud bang. "See you next time then. Take care, I won't be sending you off." Meanwhile, the emperor was studying how to host a welcoming ceremony for the newcomer. According to tradition, he should invite the noble children who were expected to become friends. The attendant faithfully wrote down the emperor's requests. First, they needed to finalize the guest list. Should they invite the Duke of Isolon's family? He'd heard the emperor disliked them, but they were still the crown princess's parents. The attendant felt a headache coming on. In the end, he still wrote their names down. Hopefully nothing would go wrong. Isolde, fresh out of the mid-tower, couldn't hide her excitement. She asked Leon if she could learn magic herself. She also wanted to become a mage like Mimir who could make rainbow flowers bloom. Hearing that, Leon drooped his head and asked himself, "Does Isolde really have the talent for magic? Do I actually understand Isolde?" Unsurprisingly, the answer was, of course not. Seeing Leon suddenly go quiet and thinking of all his strange reactions today, Isolde quickly said, "If you don't want me to become a mage, then I won't learn. Please don't be like this, all right?" Realizing the misunderstanding, Leon quickly stood and waved his hands. This isn't what I meant. If you want to learn, then go learn. Whatever you want to do, I'll help you achieve it. Just promise me one thing. You absolutely must not do anything dangerous. Then the two of them made a solemn yet childish pinky promise. Where are we going now? The Empress said I could play in her rose garden before. Let's go there. However, the moment Isolde arrived at the garden, she heard terrible news. Her parents would be coming to see her at the court banquet. Her world instantly went dark. She collapsed helplessly onto the ground. No matter how Leon called out to her, she didn't respond. Her hands began clenching on their own. Even when the thorns pierced her skin, she didn't notice at all. From that moment on, Isolde's behavior returned to how she had been in the ducal estate. At the dining table, no matter how the maids persuaded her to eat more, she remained unmoved. Because to fit into the corset, she had to start dieting immediately. Her mother had said her waist must look thinner than anyone else's. If she failed, she didn't want to say the rest aloud, nor even think about it. The maid suggested they look at dresses first. The wardrobe was full of colorful gowns of every style. Yet the one color Isolde wanted, white, was nowhere to be found. And no matter how the seamstress sister persuaded her, she stubbornly insisted on white. Because her parents had said that Erection were descendants of angels, and white symbolized the Erection family, so the dress must be white. These past few days, Leon had seen everything, his eyes full of aching sorrow. Isolde, do you really want to wear white? If you wish, your dress can be decorated with spring-colored gemstones. A flicker of hesitation flashed in Isolde's heart. No, white. It has to be white. If I don't wear white, if I don't become thin enough to fit the corset, I'll be taken back to the ducal estate. In a dim room, Isolde hobbled about, the familiar scolding echoing in her ears. Did I return to the ducal estate again? She fell to her knees, repeatedly apologizing to that phantom voice. In her heart, she kept calling Leon's name. Leon, where are you? Please save me. But then a voice she had longed for day and night, yet now sounded unbearably cold, echoed, What kind of queen do you think you are? Isolde stared at him in disbelief, and Leon's cold voice continued, Someone like you. I disliked you the moment I first saw you. She choked up, crying, Leon, do even you dislike me? Ever since hearing her parents would come, Isolde woke up from nightmares every night. She was terrified her parents would take her away from the palace and back to that hellish ducal estate. Meanwhile, Leon couldn't sleep, his heart full of worry for Isolde. But suddenly a rustling sound came, an assassin. Nothing like this had happened before. Leon swiftly drew the dagger hidden under his pillow. He had to subdue the intruder before they reached Isolde's room. But when Leon seized the figure, he froze in shock. The person who came was actually Isolde. Startled by Leon's sudden movement, Isolde, already frightened, burst into tears from the overwhelming fear and hurt. Leon, even you hate me. Can I still stay here? Leon hurriedly helped her up, flustered. What are you talking about? Did you come this late because of a nightmare? Isolde clutched Leon's nightclothes like someone drowning. In front of you, I can't do anything perfectly. Leon, you won't send me to a convent like my parents, right? Of course not. Feeling Isolde's fear, Leon gently held her trembling hand. Isolde, you are the most precious person to me. How could I ever do that to you? First, change your clothes. Your cold sweat has soaked them. You'll catch a cold, and I'll have a maid escort you back to change. Isolde, whose emotions had just calmed, suddenly grew agitated again. No, I don't want to go. No, mother will take me back. Isolde, it was just a nightmare. There is no place safer than the imperial palace. Do you understand? The highest authority in the entire empire is the emperor, even at the ball. The emperor outranks the duke. Even if the ball is held, the palace won't magically turn into the ducal estate. The duke and duchess can't possibly appear in your room. So none of the things you fear will happen. Will you trust me? Until the day of the ball arrives, I promise you this. For at least 10 years, they won't be able to touch a single finger of yours, nor step into the palace. My word is my bond. Isolde stared blankly at Leon, the tear hanging at her lashes heartbreakingly fragile. Leon couldn't withstand that pitiful look. With a sigh, he said, If you're still scared, then sleep with me tonight if you want. Bailey can sleep with us too. Having barely slept for days, Isolde fell asleep the moment her head touched the pillow. Looking at her tired little face, Leon thought, if only I could take on her nightmares for her. The king was truly miserable, scolded by both the queen and the crown prince, yet he didn't dare fight back. All because he failed to review the invitation list for the ball, letting his attendant invite someone who shouldn't have been invited, making his future daughter-in-law anxious day and night. When the queen saw the culprit, her anger shot straight up, yet she still wore a brilliant smile. Since the invitation is already finalized, let's think of a way to handle it. Instead of cleaning up the mess caused by this useless troublemaker, why don't we make sure the Duke and his wife can never step into high society again? What do you think, Your Majesty? The king didn't dare make a sound, but when no one else spoke, he finally said, that could work. But Leon, has Isolde's condition improved at all? Leon shot his father a displeased look. These past few days she's been wearing the colors I like and she's started eating again. But she still wakes up from nightmares and she can only fall asleep when I'm beside her. Mother is right that it's because you approve things as carelessly as always. That remark was like dumping gasoline onto the queen's anger. Her cold stare locked onto the king. Sensing he might be kneeling on a washboard tonight, the king quickly thumped his chest and made a promise. No matter what it takes, I will not let them set foot in the palace. Hearing this, the queen sighed. Too much pressure would only backfire. They had to make the Duke and his wife say with their own mouths that they wouldn't come again. The king immediately tried to flatter her, as expected of Freya, so wise and brilliant. Unfortunately, he aimed wrong and received a warning glare instead. Leon then asked thoughtfully, Father, Mother, this year I've reached the age of a troublemaking young man, correct? Cold sweat dripping under the queen's stare, the king hurried to pick up the topic. Yes, yes, time really flies, right, my queen? The queen responded with a glare to the back of his head. Then Leon stood up with full confidence. At my age, boys are supposed to stir up trouble, aren't they? If father permits, I'm willing to turn that ball upside down. The queen told Leon to calm down first and explain the plan in detail. The king, however, approved of the idea. Using royal authority to suppress them would only give the Duke and his wife an excuse to make noise. But if the crown prince caused their embarrassment through a mistake, people would simply chalk it up to something a child would naturally do. The queen added, aside from the two of us, no one will blame a young prince. And even if it's just a child's prank, if it succeeds, it'll serve as a warning to others. For the Duke factions who idolized the Elysian family and despised royal authority, the three at the top of power reached complete agreement, using this small incident to straighten out the nobles. This prank would definitely be entertaining, wouldn't it? He had once been the brave commander of the Night Order, but somehow he had become the crown prince's #1 errand man. He had just finished guarding the door for the prince and hadn't taken a sip of water, before being dragged to the clock tower to find the witch. At that moment, the witch was stirring a pot of unknown green liquid. Your Highness, do you know I've pulled several all-nighters for my research? Leon, long used to her attitude, shot back. And what does that have to do with me? I have something to ask of you. The witch didn't answer. Instead, she turned to Sir Byrne. Can I take this prince-shaped thing and dissect it? For Isolde, I need your power. Hearing Isolde's name, the witch stopped what she was doing and looked at Leon. I take back what I said. What happened to Isolde? I need you to use some magic at the spring ball. The witch paused and thought. If it's for Isolde, then maybe. But if you want a witch to work for you, you must pay a price. What can you offer me? I guarantee you'll receive the most beautiful smile in the world, and Isolde's fondness. The witch seemed satisfied with that reward. Fine. Then I will prepare a perfect ball for you. Soon the day of the ball arrived. Isolde put on the dress the seamstress had carefully designed for her. Leon's face flushed red just from seeing her. But the next second, Isolde turned her head slightly, and Leon's already red face grew even redder. You're not allowed to turn like that in front of anyone else. At that moment, the seamstress came over and said, Isolde's dress isn't finished yet. Please smile. Only when the wearer smiles is a dress truly complete. Isolde nervously tugged at the corners of her mouth, forcing a stiff smile. Like this. Leon was so startled he quickly changed the subject. Would you like to try on the shoes I brought? Giving you comfortable shoes may be the only thing I can do for you right now. But if this can make you happy even just a little, I'm willing to give everything for your smile. Seeing Leon's sincere eyes, a blush spread across Isolde's cheeks. Thank you, Leon. Maybe As long as I wear the shoes you gave me and hold your hand, everything will get better. The seamstress, finished with her preparations, was about to leave, but Isolde called out to her. This time her smile was no longer forced, it was genuine and warm. Is it complete now? Yes. Now it has become the most beautiful dress. Leon's heartfelt words finally dispersed the gloom on Isolde's face, and her bright smile returned. She would be the brightest star of the ball tonight, though it would be even more perfect if those two people didn't show up. As the Duke and Duchess of Alicia entered, everyone's attention was instantly drawn to the Duchess's outfit. And inwardly people whispered, did the Duke's household skip this year's fashion magazines and fashion news? The rather self-admiring Duchess was secretly pleased with herself. No wonder, after dressing up for 8 hours, of course everyone can't take their eyes off me. She then greeted a familiar Marchioness with great enthusiasm. The Marchioness forced an awkward smile. Duchess, your taste is as elegant as ever. Feeling proud, the Duchess replied, if you're interested, I can recommend the boutique I always visit. Just then news arrived that the Emperor and Empress had entered. The Duchess shoved aside the person next to her. My Isolde should be coming in with them, right? As long as she doesn't speak nonsense and does what I taught her, she'll definitely shine. She wouldn't dare disappoint me, right? The king looked down at the crowd from above. With spring's arrival, the royal family also welcomes a lovely new member, the fiancée who has pledged her life to the crown prince. Tonight's ball is held in her honor, so please everyone feel at ease. Here the king paused. That outfit is certainly eye-catching. You can spot it even if you don't want to. He then looked back at Isolde. Child, you're the main character today. Would you like to say a few words to everyone? Leon gently tugged on her skirt, signaling her to forget every line her mother had drilled into her. The highest authority here isn't your parents, it's the king and queen. So say whatever you want. Understand? Isolde stepped forward, flustered and unsure. The Duchess, unexpectedly more nervous than her, muttered, what is she hesitating for? Hurry and speak. At that moment the prince stepped closer and whispered softly to Isolde. It's all right, I'm right here with you. Yes, Leon was right beside her, and so were the king and queen. With newfound courage, Isolde bowed deeply to the crowd. Thank you all for welcoming me. Before the celebration officially begins, please enjoy the food and drinks. Relax and prepare for what's coming next. Leon escorted Isolde back to her seat after her speech. Isolde was filled with anxiety. What should I do? Mother will definitely be disappointed with me. Leon held her hand and comforted her. No, you did wonderfully. If things go wrong today, I'll run away with you tonight. And Albert will stay by your side to protect you. At that very moment, Albert was busy flirting with the Duchess. Crimson wine swirled in the glass. The battle of influence was about to begin. Albert looked around nervously with the bottle. The crown prince had ordered him to make sure the Duchess finished that wine no matter what. As a professional toolman, Albert panicked. Is His Highness planning to poison her? The prince pondered. I'd love to, but the consequences would be too big, and Isolde would be sad. Anyway, it's for her sake, so you can handle it, right? As Albert turned to leave, he kept muttering to himself. As a royal guard, I guess this isn't impossible. It's just that His Highness keeps treating me like a tool. Thanks to the Duchess's uniquely flashy outfit, Albert found her instantly. She gave him a graceful smile. Captain of the Qin Royal Knights and a guardian of romance as well. The Duchess was instantly struck by his handsome looks. She cleared her throat shyly. That child is in your care. She must not get a single scratch. Albert nodded quickly and presented the wine. By the way, His Highness ordered me to deliver this one-of-a-kind royal wine to you. He didn't allow her any chance to refuse. He simply picked up the wine glass and poured. The Duchess inhaled the rich aroma, unconsciously swallowing, though still trying to look reserved. But under Albert's relentless handsome charm attack, she reluctantly reached out and accepted the glass. And so Albert held the Duchess by the waist and guided her to the balcony. His Highness ordered me to serve you properly. No mistakes allowed. Please, this way. Watching everything from the shadows, the witch who controlled the whole setup covered her mouth and chuckled softly. Looks like things are going quite well. Meanwhile, the Duke was growing increasingly anxious. Where did that woman run off to again? She had just been here, darting around like a startled mouse. At that moment he spotted his wife through the window. He angrily pushed the glass door open. "My lady, what are you doing here? We need to hurry and greet His Majesty." The Duchess, cheeks flushed and eyes hazy, murmured, well, look who's here. Isn't this my remarkable husband? See the Emperor? Sure, of course. Let's go give my child a proper scolding." Watching his wife drunkenly making a scene, the Duke held back a string of curses, mainly because Albert was standing right there. "We are practically the hosts of this ball. How can you wander around and drink yourself into this state?" Albert, completely baffled by the situation, scratched his head that he truly wasn't sure whether what he'd done was right. The utterly wasted Duchess was dragged by the Duke to pay respects to the Emperor. A violent wave of dizziness surged through her, making her feel like she might burst at any moment. "Greetings to His Majesty, the Son of the Empire. Because Isolde prepared such a magnificent banquet, I am truly moved to tears." The Queen noticed the Duchess's strange condition and asked with concern how she was feeling. The Duke hurried to cover the embarrassment with a laugh, explaining that his wife was simply too happy today and drank a bit too much, assuring Her Majesty not to worry. The Queen nodded, then suddenly said, "Since that's the case, Lady Alicia, would you be willing to tell the other ladies here how you raised our daughter-in-law? Why is she so mature at such a young age, like a little adult?" The moment those words fell, the guests burst into murmurs. "Little adult" was hardly a compliment that it seemed the Erythian family truly imposed excessive discipline as the whispers grew more convincing. The Duke, unable to sit still, urged his wife to at least refute something, but the Duchess only covered her mouth tightly, looking utterly uncomfortable. With no other choice, the Duke tried to speak on her behalf. Yet he was immediately cut off by the Queen's cold voice. "Duke Erythian, I asked your wife, so she will answer." Isolde also noticed her mother's strange state and glanced at Leon for help. Leon softly reassured her, "It's all right. From now on, you don't have to fear your parents anymore." Isolde didn't understand what he meant. Her heart was filled only with worry for her mother. After struggling for a long time, the Duchess finally forced out a shameless line. "Raising Isolde was done with love." The Queen, remembering Isolde's body covered in wounds, raised her voice without meaning to. "Love? You call that love?" The Emperor quickly grasped the Queen's hand to calm her. She took a deep breath and said quietly, "Truly, an excellent method of education, lady." At that moment, the Duchess suddenly said she wanted to hold Isolde. She opened her arms. "Isolde, come here and let your mother hold you." Leon whispered softly, "If you don't want to go, you don't have to." Isolde told Leon not to worry, she wanted to confirm something. Seeing Isolde still so obedient, both the Duke and Duchess looked pleased. The Duchess pulled her into a tight embrace. "Good girl, that I knew you'd come. You even managed to grasp the situation quickly and act on it. So sensible." In her mother's arms, Isolde felt none of the warmth she felt from the Queen or from Leon. Those calculated, self-serving words only deepened the disgust on her small face. She understood now. This woman may have given birth to her, but she was not someone who truly loved her. This royal ball was a trap meant for this woman. And after performing the facade of motherly affection, the Duchess reminded Isolde to behave and get along with the Crown Prince. Then somewhere in the hall a snap echoed. The Duke suddenly stared at his wife's head in horror. "My dear, why is there a mouse on your head?" The Duchess screamed in terror. "What? Get it off." The surrounding nobles quickly backed away. Whether it was the mouse or the Duchess's reaction, she could no longer hold back. Her stomach churned, and before everyone's eyes, she threw up violently. The witch who orchestrated all of this couldn't help bursting into laughter. Now that's a sight you don't get to see every day. At that moment, the Duke lost his balance as the Duchess pulled on him, and in the chaos he yanked the tablecloth beside him. Sensing danger, Leon quickly shielded Isolde beneath him. A flying wine glass struck Leon's back, shards of glass slicing past his cheek. The guards immediately protected the Emperor and Empress, and subdued the Duke. Even with blood streaming down his head, Leon was still worried about Isolde. Just then Albert arrived. Leon told him to take Isolde away first. Isolde stared at the blood-covered Leon, stubbornly refusing to leave. But Leon could no longer hold on. His vision went dark, and he collapsed unconscious. The mess was quickly handled afterward. The Emperor declared he did not believe his in-laws would attempt an assassination. Even if the hall was in chaos, he would still acknowledge their innocence. But since it happened, accountability was unavoidable. The Duke was ordered to return home for now. Realizing things were turning against her, the Duchess began playing the emotional card. How could I leave my child behind? I was only moved by the Crown Prince's special wine. The Empress looked down at her from above. So, Duchess, are you implying this was the Crown Prince's fault? He is my only son, and now he must undergo treatment. Did we not clearly warn you before? You were not to appear anywhere near Isolde. The invitation reached you only because of a servant's mistake. So from now on, do not shamelessly imagine you can set foot in the palace again. To be safe, you should remain confined to your territory for a period of reflection. My apologies, Duke. Once again you've been embarrassed because of this. And so the Duke and Duchess left the palace in utter disgrace. Isolde watched the carriage carrying her parents fade into the distance, a trace of sadness in her eyes. But then she remembered the wound Leon suffered to protect her. The towering wall that had always stood inside her heart crumbled with overwhelming force. The plan against the Duke's family succeeded, but the Crown Prince's injury had been unexpected. Relaxing in his bath, Leon's thoughts drifted. With this wound as fuel, the news would surely spread quickly, and perhaps soon everyone would know, turning the Irichin family into the most notorious house in imperial history. That family was destined to fall anyway. I've only sped things up a little. It should be fine. But, will anyone look at Isolde with hostility because of this? That has never happened before. That was why Isolde had always been dutiful within the perfect cage built around her. But things are different now. Even if she becomes a member of the royal family, she might still be dragged down together with the Irichin ducal house. If before that happens I help Isolde develop her own independence, maybe she'll be fine. I hope Father can properly use the opportunity one created and restore Isolde's future, so that his mess won't implicate me. I don't want to pick up his fallen crown and purge the nobles a second time. Anyway, after this incident, the ducal house shouldn't be a problem anymore. Leon looked at himself in the mirror, memories rising again, but a sudden dizziness made him crash to the floor. The maids waiting outside rushed in at the sound. Your Highness, are you all right? Leon forced an awkward smile, saying he was fine, but inwardly he was confused. The same thing had happened before. Whenever he recalled the past, his head felt like it would split. So this is the price of turning back time. But maybe it's fine. If my memories change, that means the future is changing. Even if recalling the past tears my head apart, as long as Isolde becomes happier by my side, I won't mind. But before he could finish, a sharp pain stabbed his head. Wait, why did I assume Isolde will definitely stay by my side? A maid's voice jolted Leon out of the nightmare. When did I receive treatment? Isolde nervously cupped Leon's face. Sister Mimir said people who keep spacing out will be boiled into soup. And Her Majesty said once the engagement ceremony is held, Leon, you'll be mine. So let's agree, don't get hurt again, all right? Leon gave an awkward little smile. Mother is joking again. Isolde grew anxious at once. It's not a joke. Just then, the maid reminded them it was time to head to the hall. Leon stood and took Isolde's hand. Shall we go, Miss Isolde? May I have the honor of escorting you? He successfully dodged the question Isolde had asked. The one he could never answer. He could not promise her that he could not stay by her side forever. If he wished to protect her, this was the burden he had to bear. When Isolde finally finds happiness, he must be the one to let everything go.